Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravajakacharyas Satirasata Shishima Jagadguru Saraswarup Ananda Bhagavad Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravajakacharyas Satirasata Shishima His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavanda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shri Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganges Mai Ki Jai. Srimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur's World Mission Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled abode. All glories to the assembled abode. All glories to the assembled abode.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga.
To Shishi Guru and Gauranga Gaur Premananda. Hari Bol.
Namaste, says Om Jnanatimmarandasya Jana Shalakaya Chakshulunmilitam Jena Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamaya Darati Swapadantikam. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual masters have opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who is established within this material world, mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter at his lotus feet? Hari Bol. So today we're going to finish the story of Gajendra. Reading from the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 4. Gajendra returns to the spiritual world. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, when the Lord delivered Gajendra, king of the elephants, all the demigods, sages, and Gandharvas, headed by Brahma and Shiva, praised this activity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and showered flowers upon both the Lord and Gajendra. So in his purport, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada makes an important point. It is evident from this chapter that great sages like Devala Rishi, Narada Muni, and Agastya Muni will sometimes curse someone. The curse of such a personality, however, is in fact a benediction. Both the crocodile, who had been a Gandharva in his previous life, and Gajendra, who had been a king named Indradumna, were cursed. But both of them benefited. Indradumna, in his birth as an elephant, attained salvation and became a personal associate of the Lord in Vaikuntha. And the crocodile regained his status as a Gandharva. We find evidence in many places that the curse of a great saint or devotee is not a curse, but a benediction. And such is also the case with the chastisement of the spiritual master. The spiritual master is the actual you, best friend. And he helps you defeat the false ego. And as long as you're not identifying with the false ego, it's very easy to appreciate that the spiritual master is my greatest friend and is trying to help me. But as soon as I start to identify with the false ego, and the spiritual master is trying to attack the false ego and break down the false ego, and you're supposed to be helping him do that, if you're not in that consciousness, this leads to anger, and that can easily turn into offenses. So we have to be very careful to always remember what we're actually trying to do. Try to remember that The mind and the false ego, as Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, can be one's greatest friend or one's worst enemy, according to how well they're trained.
I have a quick question, and it's a little bit off topic, if that's okay. Indra Duna, did he also play a part in Lord Jagannath's pastimes?
Same name, but I think different personality.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's never made clear, but it doesn't sound like him. Text 2. There was a beating of kettle drums in the heavenly planets. The inhabitants of Gandharva Loka began to dance and sing, while great sages and the inhabitants of Charana Loka and Siddha Loka offered prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottam. The best of the Gandharvas, King Huhu, having been cursed by Devala Muni, had become a crocodile. Now, having been delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he assumed a very beautiful form as a Gandharva. Understanding by whose mercy this had happened, he immediately offered his respectful obeisances with his head and began chanting prayers just suitable for the transcendental Lord, the Supreme Eternal, who is worshipped by the choicest verses. Having been favored by the causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and having regained his original form, King Huhu circumambulated the Lord and offered his obeisances. Then, in the presence of all the demigods, headed by Brahma, he returned to Gandharva Loka. He had been freed from all sinful reactions. Because Gajendra, the king of the elephants, had been touched directly by the hands of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he was immediately freed from all material ignorance and bondage. Thus, he received the salvation of Sarupya Mukti, in which he achieved the same bodily features as the Lord, being dressed in yellow garments and possessing 4 hands. Report of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. If one is favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead by having his gross body touched by the Lord, his body turns into a spiritual body, and he can go back home, back to Godhead. Gajendra assumed a spiritual body when his body was touched by the Lord. Similarly, Dhruva Maharaj assumed his spiritual body in this way. Archana Padhati, daily worship of the deity, provides an opportunity to touch the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus it enables one to be fortunate enough to get a spiritual body and go back to Godhead, not only by touching the body of the Supreme Lord, but simply by hearing about his pastimes, chanting his glories, touching his feet, and offering worship. In other words, by serving the Lord somehow or other, one is purified of material contamination. This is the result of touching the Supreme Lord. One who is a pure devotee, Anya Bilashita Sunyam, who acts according to the Shastra and the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, certainly becomes purified. Like Gajendra, he assumes a spiritual body and returns home, back to Godhead. 7. This Gajendra had formerly been a Vaishnava and the king of the country known as Pandya, which is in the province of Dravida, South India. In his previous life, he was known as Indradumna Maharaj. Indradumna Maharaj retired from family life and went to the Malaya Hills, where he had a small cottage for his ashram. He wore matted locks on his head and always engaged in austerities. Once, while observing a vow of silence, he was fully engaged in the worship of the Lord and absorbed in the ecstasy of love of Godhead. While Indradumna Maharaj was engaged in ecstatic meditation, worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a great sage, Agastya Muni, arrived there, surrounded by his disciples. When the Muni saw that Maharaj Indradumna, who was sitting in a secluded place, remained silent and did not offer did not follow the etiquette of offering him a reception, he was very angry. Agastya Muni then spoke this curse against the king. This king, Indradumna, is not at all gentle, being low and uneducated. He has insulted a Brahmin. May he therefore enter the region of darkness and receive the dull, dumb body of an elephant. Purport. An elephant is very strong. It has a very big body, and it can work very hard and eat a large quantity of food, but its intelligence is not at all commensurate with its size and strength. Thus, in spite of so much bodily strength, the elephant works as a menial servant for a human being. Agastya Muni thought it wise to curse the king to become an elephant, because the powerful king did not receive Agastya Muni as one is obliged to receive a Brahmin. Yet, although Agastya Muni cursed Maharaj Indradumna to become an elephant, the curse was indirectly a benediction. For by undergoing one life as an elephant, Indradumna Maharaj ended the reactions for all the sins of his previous life. Immediately after the expiry of the elephant's life, he was promoted to Vaikuntha Loka, become a personal associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan, in a body exactly like that of the Lord. This is called Sarupya Mukti. So I just thought that was a nice point, that material qualifications don't necessarily transfer very well into spiritual qualifications. I grew up in Austin, Texas, in the land of the country western music and the crossover music and stuff like that. And even though we lived out in the country, we had 100 acres. But across the road from us was this place called the Enchanted Tavern. It was this little honky-tonk beer joint place, and people would go there and drink beer and shoot pool and do stupid stuff. And they had this jukebox, and they had these huge speakers set up outside, and they would just broadcast their music really loud and hoping to attract more people as they're driving down the road to come in and spend their money at their place, So consequently, we had to listen to this horrible music, even though we're out in the middle of the country. And there were these, I don't know if you're familiar with country western songs, but they take great pleasure in coming up with these silly titles for them. Like, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. And stuff like that. The songs are really shallow. They're almost always about the pain of heartbreak, from this or that, always due to bad choices, but they don't go and dwell into that very much at all. But there was this one song that I thought was kind of interesting, and it was, "Are you on the top 40 of your Lordy, Lordy, Lordy? Will you be a hit in heaven because you are one on earth?" And I thought, okay, that's a little bit insightful. It's not your typical, broken pickup truck, horrible relationship song. There's actually a little bit insightful about, thinking about, material fame and wealth and stuff. Is there any real value to it? Oh, okay. It's an interesting concept coming out of these speakers for a change. So there's a saying that we should always take good instruction no matter where we find it. (11:12). Sukadeva Goswami continued, "My dear king, after Agastya Muni had thus cursed King Indradumna, the Muni left that place along with his disciples. Since the king was a devotee, He accepted Agastya Muni's curse as welcome because it was the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, although in his next life he got the body of an elephant, because of devotional service, he remembered how to worship and offer prayers to the Lord. Purport. This is the unique position of a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although the king was cursed, he welcomed the curse because a devotee is always aware that nothing can happen without the desire of the Supreme Lord. Although the king was not at fault, Agastya Muni cursed him, and when this happened, the king considered it to be due to his past misdeeds. This is a practical example of how a devotee thinks. He regards any reverses in life as blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, instead of being agitated by such reverses, he continues his activities of devotional service, and Krishna takes care of him and enables him to be promoted to the spiritual world, back to Godhead. If a devotee has to suffer the reactions of his past misdeeds, the Supreme Lord arranges for him to be given only a token of these reactions, and very soon he is freed from all the reactions of material contamination. One should therefore adhere to devotional service, and the Lord himself will very soon see to one's promotion to the spiritual world. A devotee should not be disturbed by unfortunate circumstances, but must continue his regular program, depending on the Lord for everything. The word upadarayan, considering, is very significant in this verse. The word indicates that a devotee knows what is what. He understands what is happening in material conditional life. So there's so many other instances that we come across where we see this lesson reinforced. Same thing happened with Maharaj Parikshit, right? Due to Krishna's arrangement, he became very fatigued and short-tempered while out in the hunting in the forest, and he made an offense against, what was the guy's name? I can't remember the Brahmin's name, but the Brahmin was sitting in trance and didn't welcome him. They didn't offer him any water, so there was a dead snake there, and Maharaj Parikshit used his bow to garland the sage with the snake, and this was at the beginning of Kali Yuga, and so when the Brahmin's young son came and found his father in that condition, he became very angry and cursed Maharaj Parikshit to die within 7 days by the bite of a snake bird, this creature that he had invented in his boyhood mind. And even though he could have done so many things to try to protect himself, Parikshit Maharaj is considered, this is Krishna's mercy. It's the benediction of Krishna. This is a chance to become free from all these attachments and hassles of being a king and all this kind of stuff. And because of that, we get to hear Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And similarly, with the Pandavas, all the different trials and tribulations they were put through and this and that. Then you got the sons of Kuvera, Nali Kavara and Manigriva, as we heard in the Lord Damodar prayers. They were cursed by Narada Muni, become trees. But they became trees in the courtyard of Nanda and Yasoda and got to see Krishna's pastimes and became purified. All these wonderful things. Text 13. Upon delivering the king of the elephants from the clutches of the crocodile and from material existence, which resembles a crocodile, the Lord awarded him the status of Sarupya Mukti. In the presence of the Gandharvas, the Siddhas, and the other demigods, who were praising the Lord for his wonderful transcendental activities, the Lord, sitting on the back of his carrier, Garuda, returned to his all-wonderful abode and took Gajendra with him. Purport. In this verse, the word vimokshya is very significant. For a devotee, moksha or mukti, salvation, means getting the position of the Lord's associate, The impersonalists are satisfied to get the liberation of merging into the Brahman effulgence. But for a devotee, mukti, liberation, means not to merge in the effulgence of the Lord, but to be directly promoted to the Vaikuntha planets and to become an associate of the Lord. In this regard, there is a relevant verse in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 10:14-8. One who seeks your compassion and thus tolerates all kinds of adverse conditions due to the karma of his past deeds, who engages always in your devotional service with his mind, words, and body, and who always offers obeisances unto you, is certainly a bona fide candidate for liberation. A devotee who tolerates everything in this material world and patiently executes his devotional service can become muktapadi sadatyabhak, a bona fide candidate for liberation. The word dayabhak refers to a hereditary right to the Lord's mercy. A devotee must simply engage in devotional service, not caring about material situations. Then he automatically becomes a rightful candidate for promotion to Vaikuntha Loka. The devotee who renders unalloyed service to the Lord gets the right to be promoted to Vaikuntha Loka, just as a son inherits the property of his father. But we are so fortunate, though. Not only are we getting the opportunity to be promoted to Vaikuntha Loka, but due to coming in contact with such confidential devotees of the Lord, as Siddhas Ananda and Bhaktivedanta and Bhakti Siddhanta and Gorkashordas Babaji and Bhakti Vinod, we get the opportunity to be promoted directly to Krishna Loka, not just Vaikuntha Loka, the most intimate of the spiritual worlds. When a devotee gets liberation, he becomes free from material contamination and engages as a servant of the Lord. This is explained in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 2.10.6. Muktir hitta vanyanta rupam swarupena vayashtitihi. The word sarupya refers to sarupya mukti, going back home, back to Godhead, and remaining the Lord's eternal associate, having regained a spiritual body exactly resembling that of the Lord, with 4 hands holding the Shankha, Chakra, Gada, and Padma. The difference between the mukti of the impersonalist and that of the devotee is that the devotee is immediately appointed an eternal servant of the Lord, whereas the impersonalist, although merging in the effulgence of the Brahmajyoti, is still insecure and therefore generally falls again to this material world. Although the impersonalist rises to the Brahman effulgence and enters into that effulgence, he has no engagement in the service of the Lord, and therefore he is again attracted to materialistic philanthropic activities. Thus, he comes down to open hospitals and educational institutions, feed poor men, and perform similar materialistic activities, which the impersonalist thinks are more precious than serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anadrita Yujmad Angaharaya. The impersonalists do not think that the service of the Lord is more valuable than serving the poor man or starting a school or hospital. Although they say, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mitya, Brahman is real and the material world is false, they are nonetheless very eager to serve the false material world and neglect the service of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of God. So we hear that even the demons who get killed by Krishna obtain liberation. But it's not on the same level as that of the devotees, because they still haven't attained bhakti. Now, of course, there's different circumstances. A lot of the demons that Krishna kills are there, they're assuming the role of a demon by Krishna's desire so that he can perform specific pastimes. And those kind of demons do go back to Krishna directly. But in general, unless one actually comes to the point of developing bhakti, actual love and appreciation for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you won't want to be in the spiritual world. Right? The spirit soul is active by nature. Excuse me. Spirit soul is active by nature. You are going to be forced to act. So even though you may hang out in the Brahman Jyoti for billions of years, earth years or whatever, it's simply a blink of an eye in the scope of eternity, right? And at some point, you will be forced by your desires to be active. This is the nature of the soul, to be active, to engage in service. You are, by your constitutional position, the servant of Krishna. So if you're not serving Krishna, you're not complete, you're not whole. You won't be satisfied. And so you will again have to fall into this material world and come to the point of becoming a devotee. We were listening to the reading of the description of autumn in the Krishna book. And it was describing how beautiful Vrindavan is and how wonderful the atmosphere is there. And one of the things that was mentioned was that most of the trees in Vrindavan, when the Vrindavan that appeared in this world, were impersonalists who have, again, taken their birth to try to come to that point of obtaining bhakti. And you may remember that Krishna was walking with Balaram one day and he was saying, oh, just see these wonderful trees. They're trying to touch your lotus feet. They're offering their fruits and their flowers, right? They're trying to become devotees. And this is the process, that even though they had been impersonalists, they still got that opportunity to come down at some point to develop their actual relationship with Krishna. As we read in the previous chapter, Krishna is incessantly trying to bring his devotees back home. Text 14. My dear King Parikshit, I have now described the wonderful power of Krishna as displayed when the Lord delivered the king of the elephants. O best of the Kuru dynasty, those who hear this narration become fit to be promoted to the higher planetary systems. Simply because of hearing this narration, they gain a reputation as devotees. They are unaffected by the contamination of Kali Yuga, and they never see bad dreams. Therefore, after getting up from bed in the morning, those who desire their own welfare, especially the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and in particular the Brahmin Vaishnavas, should chant this narration as it is, without deviation, to counteract the troubles of bad dreams. Purport. Every verse in the Vedic literature, especially in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, is a Vedic mantra. Hear the words. These guys with their cars and motorcycles. Hear the words. Yadhan, Yadhantrikritita, I can't say it. Yahanukritanayanti are used to recommend that this literature be presented as it is. Unscrupulous persons, however, deviate from the actual narration and interpret the text in their own way with grammatical jugglery. Such deviations are to be avoided. This is a Vedic injunction supported by Sukadeva Goswami, one of the Mahajans or authorities. He says, Yathunan kirtanyanti. One should recite the mantra as it is, without deviation, for then one will be eligible to rise to the platform of all good fortune. Sukadeva Goswami especially recommends that those who are Brahmins, Suchaya, recite all these mantras after rising from bed in the morning. Because of sinful activities, at night we have bad dreams, which are very troublesome. Indeed, Maharaj Yudhisthira was obliged to see hell because of a slight deviation from devotional service to the Lord. Therefore, dushapana, bad dreams, occur because of sinful activities. A devotee sometimes accepts a sinful person as his disciple, and to counteract the sinful actions he accepts from the disciple, he has to see a bad dream. Nevertheless, the spiritual master is so kind that in spite of having bad dreams due to sinful disciple, he accepts this troublesome business for the deliverance of the victims of Kali Yuga. After initiation, therefore, a disciple should be extremely careful not to commit again any sinful act that might cause difficulties for himself and the spiritual master. Before the deity, before the fire, before the spiritual master, and before the Vaishnavas, the honest disciple promises to refrain from all sinful activity. Therefore, he must not again commit sinful acts and thus create a troublesome situation. Nice encouragement. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's a unfortunate incident. Oh, I'm so bad with names. I'm sorry. Charidas is so good with it. I guess it was Srivas was passing by, and there was this Pandit giving Śrīmad Bhāgavatam class. But the Pandit was not a devotee. He was an impersonalist. And so he was not understanding the essence of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam whatsoever. But he was reading this very wonderful passage, and Srivas went into complete ecstasy. And his body started exhibiting all these ecstatic symptoms. And all the other people that were attending the class became disturbed. He was making it, he was crying and this and that and losing external consciousness. And so this Pandit instructed the students to get rid of him. And they picked him up and took him outside and threw him in the road. And of course, it was a great offense. And Srivas came to external consciousness and couldn't figure out where he was at first, and then picked himself up and went home and avoided the guy from then on. But eventually, Lord Chaitanya was very angry and cursed him. But at some point, after Lord Chaitanya went to Jagannath Puri, one of his disciples came back, and this person became attracted to this disciple of Lord Chaitanya and started rendering service to him. And due to the association of that disciple, he realized the error of his ways and became very remorseful and very apologetic. And Lord Chaitanya then blessed him, and he became a very nice devotee after that. Text 16. O best of the Kuru dynasty, the supreme personality of Godhead, the super soul of everyone, being thus pleased, addressed Gajendra in the presence of everyone there. He spoke the following blessings. The supreme personality of Godhead said, freed from all sinful reactions are those who rise from bed at the end of night, early in the morning, and fully concentrate their minds with great attention upon my form, your form, this lake, this mountain, the caves, the gardens, the cane plants, the bamboo plants, the celestial trees, the residential quarters of me, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, the three peaks of Trikuta mountain, made of gold, silver, and iron, my very pleasing abode, the ocean of milk, the white island, Swetadweep, which is always brilliant with spiritual rays, my mark of Srivatsa, the Kastuba gem, my Vajanti garland, my club, Domavaki, my Sudarsan disc and Panchanjaya conch shell, my bearer, Garuda, the king of the birds, my bed, Seshanaga, my expansion of energy, the goddess of fortune, Lord Brahma, Narada Muni, Lord Shiva, Prahlad, my incarnations like Matsya, Kurma, and Varaha, my unlimited, all auspicious activities, which yield piety to those who he who hears them, the sun, the moon, fire, the mantra Omkara, the absolute truth, the total material energy, the cows and Brahmins, devotional service, the wives of Soma and Kashyapa, who were the daughters of King Daksha, the rivers Ganges, Sarasvati, Nanda, and Jamuna, Kalindi, the elephant Airavata, Dhruva Maharaj, the seven rishis, and the pious human beings. My dear devotee, unto those who rise from bed at the end of night and offer me the prayers offered by you, I give an eternal residence in the spiritual world at the end of their lives. Shri Sukadeva Goswami continued, after giving this instruction, the Lord, who is known as Harishikesh, bugled with his Panchanjaya concha. In this way, pleasing all the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, he then mounted the back of his carrier, Garuda. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 8th canto, 4th chapter of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam entitled, Gajendra Returns to the Spiritual World. Haribol. So what I'm going to do, I've been neglectful, but I've read all of these. I'm going to post them onto SoundCloud, and I'll make a playlist of all the translations of these 4 chapters of Gajendra, so that if anybody is inclined to or has time sometime, they can hear them all in sequence like that.
Thank you.
I think we did that with, did we do that with Dhruva's? Yeah, I think we did that with Dhruva Maharaj too. Maybe Prahlad will do that too. Oh, it's very early. Short chapter this week. Anyone have any comments they want to offer? No? I mean, personally, I still don't really fully understand the whole situation with the Gandharvas and the Charanas and the Apsaras and their whole scene up in that upper planetary system and stuff. Because there was one purport where it was stating that King Huhu had also become an associate of the Lord. In the purport, Bhaktivedanta Swami stated that. But in all the verses, it was just saying that he would regained his position as a Gandharva. So I didn't quite understand that one. So if anybody comes across anything that explains that a little bit more sometime, let us know. Anything else? Short day. Let's chant for a few minutes then.
Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I said something. I guess you didn't hear me. That's okay.
No, I didn't
I
hear you.
misunderstood.
Huh? You're saying original sound, right?
Oh, I was going to tell you that, yes.
What else
That's
were
what
you
I was
saying?
trying to tell you right now. I was commenting earlier that I thought the comments about how the spiritual master, our spiritual master, takes on the results of all our sinful activities was very heavy.
It is, yes.
Not all of them. Not all of the results of our previous activities.
Well,
Just some.
yeah, but he's affected by it, is the point.
Yeah.
No.
Even some is pretty bad.
All of these things are, those of us born in Kali Yuga, we have some similar characteristics. We tend to be lazy, unlucky, misguided, and always disturbed. And then we have the four material defects, where we have the tendency to cheat, to make mistakes. We have imperfect senses. What's the other one? Forgetful. So we're not starting from a very good position, and you know. So Krishna makes allowances, fortunately, but one shouldn't abuse those. Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasthaya Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Pracharane Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pastyata Ishatarane
Namaste, Saraswati Deva
Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasade Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Shri Govinda Gopina Madana Mohana Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Guru
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Gurudev. Haribol.